The emergency beacon screamed across the galaxy like a wounded animal. Deep in the command center of the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Taloneth watched the holographic display with growing horror. The red dot representing Research Station. Kepler 442 pulsed weakly, sending its automated distress call into the endless void of space. Unknown hostiles have breached the station, the mechanical voice repeated for the 100th time. All rescue attempts have failed. Station overrun. 200 researchers trapped. Send immediate assistance. Taloneth's forearms trembled as he reviewed the casualty reports. 3 full rescue fleets had answered the call. 3 fleets had vanished without a trace. Nearly 1,000 of the galaxy's finest soldiers, gone in less than 2 weeks. Counselor Vexty materialized beside him, her crystalline body glowing with distress patterns. "The creatures are unlike anything we have encountered," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. "They consume everything, metal, flesh, energy, and they learn from every attack." "Show me the recordings again," Taloneth demanded. The hologram shifted, displaying footage from the first rescue attempt. The Zentari battlecruiser Valor had approached the station with confidence. Their plasma cannons carved through space, striking the strange growths covering the station's hull. But the creatures absorbed the energy, growing larger and stronger. Within hours, they had adapted completely. The second wave of plasma fire barely scratched them. The second fleet tried. Kinetic weapons, solid projectiles fired at incredible speeds. The creatures learned again, hardening their shells and deflecting the rounds. Some even caught the projectiles and incorporated the metal into their own bodies. The third fleet brought chemical weapons, hoping to poison the invaders. The creatures not only survived, but seemed to thrive on the toxic compounds, using them to fuel rapid reproduction. "They are not just adapting," observed Dr. Kethmer, the Council's chief scientist. His insectoid head tilted as he studied the data. "They are evolving in real time. Each attack teaches them something new. Each failure makes them stronger." Taloneth felt a chill run through his scaled skin. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Council, he had never encountered anything like this. The creatures defied every known law of biology and physics. "What about the survivors?" he asked quietly. Vexty's glow dimmed, scattered throughout the station in small groups. "The creatures seem to be ... farming them, keeping them alive but trapped. We estimate 47 different species among the researchers. Some are younglings." The command center fell silent except for the steady pulse of the distress beacon. Every being present understood the horrible truth. Conventional rescue was impossible. The creatures learned too quickly, adapted too perfectly. Sending more fleets would only feed the enemy and doom the rescuers. "There must be something," Taloneth whispered. "Some approach we have not considered." Dr. Kethmer's antennae twitched nervously. "Actually, there might be, but you will not like it." All eyes turned to the scientist. His mandibles clicked anxiously as he pulled up a new display showing species classifications. "The creatures adapt by learning patterns," he explained. "They study our tactics, our weapons, our technology. But what if we sent something unpredictable, something that does not follow standard patterns?" "Speak clearly," Vexty demanded. "Humans," Dr. Kethmer said simply. The word fell into the room like a stone into still water. Several counselors stepped back in shock. Others made sounds of disgust. "Absolutely not," declared Counselor Rexton, his reptilian features twisting with revulsion. "Humans are barely civilized. They are violent, unpredictable, dangerous." "Exactly," Dr. Kethmer replied. "They do not follow our rules. They do not use our tactics. They are ... chaotic." Taloneth considered this carefully. Humans were indeed strange among galactic species. While others had evolved beyond their primitive instincts, humans still carried the wild nature of their predator ancestors. They fought dirty, ignored protocols, and seemed to enjoy walking into danger. Even if we asked, Vexty said slowly, what makes you think they would help? They barely know we exist. Because, Dr. Kethmer clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Humans have one trait that makes them truly dangerous. They do not abandon their own, or anyone else, for that matter. On their homeworld, they risk their lives to save complete strangers every day. They call it rescue work. Taloneth accessed the human data files. Images flashed across the display. Humans diving into burning buildings, climbing impossible mountains, swimming in frozen seas, all to save others. They seemed to specialize in walking into situations that would kill any sensible being. Not their military, Taloneth said slowly. They're civilians. The ones who choose to face death every day. The debate raged for hours. Some counselors argued that humans were too primitive, too violent, too unpredictable. Others pointed out that conventional forces had already failed completely. Finally, as the distress beacon continued its lonely cry, the vote was called. By the narrowest margin in Council history, the decision was made. Earth would receive an unprecedented request. Send your deadliest humans. Not soldiers, but the ones who walked into hell and brought others home alive. The message was sent into the void, carrying with it the desperate hope of 200 trapped souls and the fears of an entire galaxy. The transport ship landed on Earth's surface with a gentle thud, kicking up dust from the makeshift spaceport in Montana. Captain Kim Day stepped out into the thin mountain air, his breathing apparatus working overtime to process the alien atmosphere. He had volunteered to collect Earth's response to the galaxy's desperate request, though he secretly hoped no one would answer. Humans were dangerous. Every species in the galaxy knew this. They fought wars over everything, ate other living creatures, and seemed to enjoy activities that would kill most civilized beings. The captain expected to meet hardened warriors with scars and weapons, ready to paint the galaxy red with blood. Instead, he found 12 humans sitting quietly around a small campfire, drinking something hot from metal cups. "You are the volunteers?" Captain Day asked through his translator, trying to hide his confusion. A woman, with short gray hair and burn marks covering both arms, stood up. Her movements were calm and steady, like someone who had learned not to waste energy on unnecessary actions. "I am Park Min," she said simply, "wildfire suppression specialist. I have been fighting forest fires for 23 years. Captain Day blinked. This was not what he had expected. "You fight, fires. When everyone else runs away from the flames, I run toward them," Park Min replied. "Someone has to stop the fire from spreading. Someone has to get the trapped people out." A quiet man with steady hands and old eyes nodded from his seat by the fire. "Li Han. I disarm bombs and explosive devices. When something might kill hundreds of people, if it explodes, they call me to make it safe." One by one, the others introduced themselves. Choi Yujin, who welded underwater in the deepest parts of the ocean where the pressure could crush a person in seconds. Nam Tae, who crawled into collapsed caves to rescue trapped miners in total darkness. Song Byora, a surgeon who operated on patients during earthquakes and disasters when normal hospitals were destroyed. Kong Il chased massive storms across continents, driving directly into hurricanes and tornadoes to study them and warn others. Yoon Soo flew rescue helicopters into places where other aircraft could not survive, pulling survivors from mountain peaks and sinking ships. Oh Dayun studied active volcanoes, walking on ground that could melt through boots and breathing air that burned lungs, all to predict eruptions and save towns. Lim Jun drove massive trucks across frozen roads that cracked under the weight, delivering supplies to remote places where people would die without help. Beak Sun climbed mountains that killed experienced climbers, not for glory, but to rescue others who had fallen or become lost in the snow. Moonji worked with explosives in cities, carefully destroying old buildings without harming anyone nearby. The last volunteer sat apart from the others. An So-young was younger than the rest, but her eyes held depths that spoke of seeing too, much too early. Former soldier, she said quietly. Now, I work with relief organizations. I go into war zones to get civilians out safely. Captain Day felt his confusion growing into something approaching panic. These were not soldiers. They were not warriors. They were ... workers. Dangerous workers, perhaps, but still civilians with jobs. I do not understand, he said carefully. The Galactic Council requested your deadliest humans. These are your most dangerous people. Parkman exchanged glances with the others. Something passed between them, a shared understanding that the alien captain could not grasp. Captain, she said gently, you misunderstand what makes us dangerous. We did not volunteer because we enjoy killing. We volunteered because we cannot stand to let others die. Li Han set down his cup and rolled up his sleeve, revealing scars from old explosions. Every day, I work with devices designed to kill as many people as possible, but I do not make them more deadly. I make them safe. I take away their power to hurt others. When a building is on fire, added Choi Yujin, normal people run away. That is smart. That is safe. But if someone is trapped inside, someone has to go in and get them. That someone is usually us. Namte nodded slowly. We are dangerous because we walk into death when others need us to. Not because we want to fight, but because someone has to choose life over safety. Captain Day struggled to process this concept. In his species, the dangerous individuals were soldiers, hunters, predators. They were kept separate from civilian populations for good reason. But these humans seemed to blur those lines completely. Your people, he said slowly, they trust you to live among them, even though you are trained to handle such dangerous situations. Song Biora laughed, but it was not a cruel sound. Captain, we do not live separate from our people. We live to protect them. Every skill we have learned, every risk we take, it is all to make sure others can go home safely to their families. The galaxy asked for our deadliest, Parkman said, standing and shouldering a worn backpack filled with equipment. But they do not understand what that means. We are deadly to anything that threatens innocent lives. We are deadly to fear, to hopelessness, to the idea that some situations are too dangerous to handle. She looked directly at Captain Day, her eyes holding that strange quality he was beginning to recognize in all of them, an absolute refusal to let others suffer when they could help. We are deadly because when death comes calling, we answer first. The modified freighter Resilience dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that ran through every bolt and beam. Captain Kim Day gripped his command chair as the ship's systems struggled to make sense of what lay ahead. Through the view screen, Station Kepler 442 looked like something from a nightmare. The research station had been a beautiful thing once, clean lines of metal and glass spinning slowly in the void, home to 200 of the galaxy's brightest minds. Now it writhed like a living creature. Strange growths covered every surface, pulsing with stolen light from the station's power systems. The growths looked like crystal and flesh fused together, creating organic tunnels and chambers that breathed with an alien rhythm. Sweet mother of stars, whispered Yun-Su from the pilot's seat. The rescue helicopter pilot had seen many disasters, but nothing like this. Those things are alive. Li Han studied the tactical displays with the calm focus he usually reserved for examining bombs. The creatures have completely integrated with the station's systems. They are using the power grid to feed themselves and grow stronger. Oh Dayun pulled up geological scans on her portable device, her volcanologist training kicking in automatically. Look at these energy readings. The creatures are not just consuming power, they are storing it, building up massive reserves. Parkman moved to stand beside Captain Day at the main view screen. The wildfire specialist had spent decades looking at situations that seemed hopeless and finding ways to make them manageable. "Captain, show us the recordings from the previous rescue attempts." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the destruction of 3 separate fleets. Each attack followed the same pattern: initial success, then rapid adaptation by the creatures, followed by complete failure and loss of ships. "They learn," observed Namte quietly. The cave rescue expert recognized the signs of intelligent adaptation, like water finding new paths around obstacles, but much faster. Song Barad was already reviewing medical data on the trapped survivors. The trauma surgeons practiced. I picked out the important details quickly. 47 different species, scattered throughout the station. The creatures are keeping them alive, but separated. Some groups have been trapped for weeks. Captain Day turned to address the human team, his voice heavy with doubt. "The Galactic Council has offered you the most advanced weapons available. Plasma cannons that can cut through starship hulls, energy shields that can deflect asteroid impacts, molecular disruptors that can break down any known material." The 12 humans looked at each other, then back at their simple equipment: cutting torches, welding gear, climbing ropes, medical supplies, explosives, and various tools that looked primitive compared to alien technology. "We appreciate the offer," Park Min said politely, "but we will use our own equipment." "Your own equipment?" Captain Day's voice cracked with disbelief. "You plan to face these creatures with welding torches and rope?" Choi Yujin patted her underwater welding gear, with the same affection a soldier might show a trusted weapon. "This torch has never failed me in 30 years of underwater work. It cuts through metal in conditions that would kill most beings. I know exactly what it can and cannot do." "The creatures adapt to attacks," added Beak Sun, checking his climbing equipment with practiced efficiency. "But they adapt to weapons and tactics. They understand. Have they ever seen mountaineering? Gear used as rescue equipment." Moon Ji was examining the station schematics with the eye of someone who understood how buildings came apart. The parasites have grown through the structure, but they followed the existing pathways: air ducts, power conduits, maintenance tunnels. They think like infrastructure, not like demolition. Lim Jun nodded, understanding immediately. They have learned to counter military tactics, but have they learned to counter emergency rescue procedures? "We are not here to fight them," Parkman said simply. "We are here to get people out. Those are 2 very different jobs." The Resilience moved closer to the infected station, its sensors painting a clearer picture of the horror within. The creatures had formed a living maze throughout the corridors, trapping survivors in isolated pockets. Previous rescue teams had tried to blast through the obstacles, teaching the parasites to create stronger barriers. "Docking in 30 seconds, announced Yun Su. "Emergency port is still functional, but barely." On Soyoung checked her equipment one final time: simple tools for cutting barriers and treating injuries. The same gear she carried into war zones on Earth. In combat, you learn that the enemy expects certain behaviors. When you do something they do not expect, you create opportunities. Li Han was studying the station's power grid, his bomb disposal training helping him understand the creature's energy distribution. They are using the geothermal taps to power their growth. The station was built over natural heat sources. "Can we use that?" asked Oh Do-yoon, her scientist's mind already working on possibilities. "Maybe," Li Han replied. "But first we need to map their growth patterns and find the survivors." The ship shuddered as it docked with the station. Through the airlock, they could hear the strange sounds of the creatures. Not quite mechanical, not quite organic, but something disturbing in between. Parkman shouldered her pack and moved toward the airlock. Behind her, 11 other humans prepared to walk into a nightmare, armed with nothing but their tools, their training, and their absolute refusal to let others die alone. "Remember," she said quietly, "we are not here to win a war. We are here to bring people home." The airlock cycled open, and 12 humans stepped into hell. The first corridor inside station, Kepler 442, looked like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed with veins of crystal and flesh, breathing with a rhythm that made the human skin crawl. Strange growths hung from the ceiling like organic chandeliers glowing with stolen energy from the station's power systems. Parkman held up her hand, signaling the team to stop. Through the dim light ahead, they could see movement, flowing masses of the parasites reshaping themselves around obstacles. The creatures looked like liquid metal mixed with living tissue, constantly changing form as they sensed the intruders. "They know we are here," whispered Namte, recognizing the signs from his cave rescue work. "But they are not attacking yet. They are studying us." Li Han pulled out a small device that detected electrical signatures. "The creatures are connected to the station's main power grid. They are sharing information instantly across the entire structure." One of the parasites flowed toward them, its crystalline surface reflecting the team's lights. It moved with curiosity rather than aggression, extending tendrils to test the air around the humans. "It is learning our scent, our heat signatures, everything about us," observed Song Bora, her medical training helping her recognize biological analysis when she saw it. The creature suddenly lunged forward, but instead of attacking, Choi Yu stepped calmly to the side and ignited her welding torch. The brilliant flame created a barrier of superheated air that the parasite could not cross. Instead of trying to adapt to the heat, the creature simply flowed around the obstacle and continued down the corridor. "Interesting," said O'Dayun. "It did not try to overcome the flame, it just avoided it." "Because fire is not a weapon," realized Kang Il, his storm-chasing experience helping him understand natural forces. "It is a tool. The creature has learned to counter weapons, but tools are different." Parkman smiled grimly. "Then we use tools, not weapons." The team moved deeper into the station, but they did not fight the creatures directly. Instead, they used their equipment in ways the parasites had never encountered. Choi Yujin's welding torch did not attack the creatures, it sealed bulkheads behind the team, creating barriers that would take time for the parasites to understand and overcome. Moonji planted small explosives, but not to kill creatures. His demolition work had taught him how to create controlled collapses that opened new pathways through damaged structures. Each explosion revealed alternate routes that the parasites had not yet mapped. Survivor group detected, called Yun Su, reading the scanner display with the same skill she used to spot people from rescue helicopters. Section C, 43 beings, including yucklings. The path to Section C was blocked by a massive growth of parasites that had fused with the corridor walls. Previous rescue teams would have tried to blast through, teaching the creatures to make stronger barriers. Instead, Namte examined the obstacle like a cavern that needed to be bypassed. "Airflow patterns show there is space behind the growth," he reported, "but the main passage is completely sealed." Beak Sun was already unpacking his climbing gear. "Then we do not use the main passage." He pointed to a maintenance shaft near the ceiling. "Mountaineering rule, when the obvious path is blocked, find another way up." The team climbed through the maintenance systems like they were navigating a vertical cave. The parasites in the main corridors below seemed confused by this approach. They had learned to counter direct assaults, but the humans were not assaulting anything, they were simply going around. In Section C, they found their first group of survivors, researchers, from 6 different species, huddled in a sealed laboratory. The beings were terrified, weak from weeks of captivity, but alive. "The creatures keep us here," explained Dr. Veltar, a reptilian scientist with tears in his large eyes. "They feed on our fear, our stress hormones, but they do not kill us quickly." Song Biora immediately began treating the most injured survivors, while the others worked on extraction. The trauma surgeon had operated in collapsed hospitals during earthquakes, working in a parasite-infested space station was just another day at the office. "We cannot take them back the way we came," observed Lim Jun, his experience with dangerous transport helping him assess the situation. "Too many creatures have gathered in the corridors behind us." Li Han was studying his readings of the station's power grid. The geothermal taps are all connected. If we could overload the system in uninhabited sections, we could create heat zones that the creatures cannot survive in. Controlled evacuation, agreed Oh Da-yoon, understanding immediately. We make parts of the station uninhabitable, forcing the creatures to retreat while we extract survivors. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. While half the team evacuated the first group of survivors, the others worked to alter the station's environment. They did not fight the parasites, they changed the rules of engagement entirely. An So-young coordinated the evacuation with the calm efficiency she had learned in war zones. 23 more groups scattered throughout the station. If we can create safe corridors, using heat barriers and controlled demolition, we can get them all out, finished Park Min. Her wildfire experience telling her exactly how to use heat and barriers to control the movement of dangerous forces. The creatures tried to adapt, but the humans kept changing their approach. Every tool was used differently than expected. Every technique borrowed from entirely different fields of work. They were not fighting the parasites. They were simply better at problem solving. Hour 14 of the rescue operation found the human team deeper in the station than any previous rescue attempt had managed to reach. They had successfully evacuated 137 survivors, but 63 beings remained trapped in the most dangerous sections, where the parasites had grown strongest. The creatures were learning, even from the humans' unconventional methods. What had worked in the first few hours was becoming less effective as the parasites adapted to tools instead of weapons. The heat barriers that Choi Yujin created now lasted only minutes before the creatures found ways around them. The demolition routes that Moon Ji opened were being sealed by parasitic growth almost as quickly as he could create them. They are getting smarter, observed Namtae, as he watched a group of parasites deliberately avoid his cave rescue techniques. Whatever intelligence guides them, it is beginning to understand our methods. Park Min checked her equipment status. Most of their supplies were running low, and exhaustion was setting in among the team. But 63 beings were still counting on them to come home alive. Final push, she announced. We get everyone out, or we do not leave at all. The deepest section of the station held the largest group of survivors, 41 researchers, trapped in the central laboratory. But the parasites had turned the entire area into their primary nest. The corridor leading to the lab was a tunnel of living tissue that pulsed with aggressive energy, lined with creatures that had grown larger and more dangerous than any they had encountered before. It is a trap, said Li Han simply, his bomb disposal instincts recognizing the signs. They want us to go in there. Then we give them what they want, replied An So-young, her war zone experience telling her that sometimes the obvious trap was the only path forward, but not in the way they expect. Moon Ji studied the structural plans one final time. If I bring down the support beams in sections 4 through 7, it will create a cascade collapse that opens a direct route to the laboratory. But someone has to manually trigger the explosives from inside the corridor. The team fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The person who triggered those explosives would not have time to escape before the corridor collapsed. I will do it, Moon Ji said quietly. Demolition is my specialty. No, said Beak's son, checking his climbing gear. I can rappel down faster than you can run. Better chance of getting out. Before anyone could argue further, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Oh, Do-yoon's instruments showed massive energy spikes from the geothermal systems they had been manipulating. The whole thermal grid is overloading, she reported, her voice tight with professional concern. We have maybe 30 minutes before this entire section becomes uninhabitable. Then we move now, Park Min decided, all of us, together. The assault on the final corridor was unlike anything in military textbooks. The humans did not charge in with weapons blazing. Instead, they moved with the coordinated efficiency of emergency responders who had trained for exactly this type of impossible situation. Choi Yujin led the way, her welding torch creating a protective barrier of superheated plasma that even the adapted parasites struggled to cross. Behind her, Numte navigated by sound and airflow, finding the safest path through the living tunnel. Song Biora stayed in the middle, ready to treat injuries that would inevitably come. The parasites attacked with everything they had learned. They flowed around the heat barriers, adapted to the demolition charges, even tried to mimic the humans' own techniques. The corridor became a nightmare of reaching tendrils, crushing walls, and toxic gases released by dying creatures. Moonji reached the critical support beam and began setting his final charges. A massive parasite, larger than any they had seen, flowed toward him with deadly intent. There was no time to run, no clever technique that could save him. "Go," he shouted to the others. "Get them out." The explosion brought down a section of corridor, creating the evacuation route they needed. But Moon Gi was buried beneath the rubble, his sacrifice opening the path to the trapped survivors. Beak Sun died 20 minutes later, his climbing ropes snapping as he lowered a group of injured younglings to safety. He held on to the evacuation line with his bare hands until every small being reached the rescue team below, then fell into the growing inferno of the overheating station. On Soyoung was last, as the thermal systems reached critical overload. She stayed behind to ensure the final evacuation pod launched successfully. Through the pod's small window, the other humans watched her standing alone in the docking bay as the station began to tear itself apart. The Resilience pulled away from Kepler 442 just as the thermal overload reached its peak. The parasites, unable to survive the extreme heat, released their grip on the station and died in the superheated environment they had helped create. 200 beings sat in the ship's cargo bay, alive, because 12 humans had walked into hell to bring them home. But only 9 humans sat with them, mourning 3 friends who had chosen death over letting others die alone. Captain Kim Dae found Parkman in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. Tears ran down her soot-stained face, but her eyes still held that absolute refusal to abandon others. "I do not understand your species," the alien captain said quietly. "Your people died for strangers. Why do you do this?" Parkman was silent for a long moment. "Because someone has to choose life over safety. Someone has to say that no one dies alone if we can help it. That is what makes us dangerous, Captain. Not our weapons or our violence. Our refusal to let others face death without hope." She turned from the stars to meet his eyes. "You asked for our deadliest. We are deadly to despair, to abandonment, to the idea that some people are not worth saving. That is the only way we know how to be."